Okay, well, good evening all.
I got
Welcome
it,
to
yeah.
the
I got
Road
my
Planning
email.
Committee meeting for January 20th, 2026. And Happy New Year. This is our first meeting of the year. Hope you all had a good holiday and have had a good start to the year. And we'll start off with introductions of members and guests. To my left,
Tom Smith.
Jane Evelyn.
Dan Saunders.
Liz Johnson.
Ann Martin.
Mary Beth Gilbert, Select Board Rep.
Galen Webley, support staff.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Paul Hogan's remote.
Excellent. Thank you, Paul. So on today's agenda, or tonight's agenda, first, I'll wait till I get the other. First discussion is on the proposed stormwater ordinances, which was sent around to all of us to review, so hopefully we had a chance. But why don't we bring that up and just talk through the changes?
I need to sign in, don't I? Bear with me, I need to sign into the Zoom.
All right, so you want me to flip that over?
All right.
Let's see.
What's that map of behind you, Paul?
Bethel, Maine area.
There you go. Definitely. Nice. Is it cold up there?
I was a little nippy today, yeah.
How's the snow?
It's fine.
It was nice.
Yeah. Cold tonight.
Where's
I'm sleeping on this.
the, okay. So is this showing for you, Paul?
Yep, thank you.
Wonderful. Okay, so the draft language that's in front of you this evening, as you know, you all looked at this draft language. We sent this to Acorn Engineering. They are our consultants that help us with any kind of technical revisions that take place for stormwater management, and we use them as an advisory opinion to help us in reviewing subdivisions and site plans that have stormwater management plans associated with them. And so they help us with these larger projects. So our objective here was to make sure that the language made sense from the profession, field, and engineering, and that we're also having our different sections communicate with each other. So that was a disconnect that you'll see in the document that was missing before. Was we had sections in our general standards that weren't talking with our subdivision standards, so we revised them that you'll see throughout this document to make sure that they're talking to each other. And so the first page here that we have, Acorn did give us some revisions of just making sure, again, the language is consistent. He suggested, again, the 24-hour rainfall events and also referencing the rainfall data from either Cornell or from Maine DEP, because there is two different data sources to get the material necessary to do the calculations. So are there any questions in that first page?
I did put just a comment there, and it's all about the should.
Mm-hmm.
Are there other sources of rainfall data that could be used by someone? Or should this be a shall, and that's what we want them to use?
Okay, yeah, I think those are the two sources that we would use in the state of Maine, so we can put shall.
I would put shall.
That's fine. If I can edit. Edit.
So this stormwater section is all new?
Yes, this section in its entirety is completely new. This was based off our conversations from earlier. So this is not in the current land use ordinance. Anything in red is basically what Acorn Engineering is recommending from our draft changes that we made as a committee.
have to accept it, then,
I know, that's what I don't.
and I think, oh, yeah, I would just do that.
Whoa.
That's not, let me change it. Hold on,
Oh, well.
there it is. Okay,
And that happens in a few of the other references. They have that same reference that has a should versus a shall.
okay.
So we can capture that when we get there.
So still on the first page here, is there any other questions that folks had? He reworked our section D here that deals with existing wetlands.
I had a question on C.
On D?
C.
On C, okay.
I just wonder, when we say that the property owner should be maintaining, I think that's where it was. It was one where they were, had to maintain their their permeable surfaces, is that C?
Yeah,
Yep,
Yeah.
that's C.
How is that enforced? How do you make sure that that's done?
Yeah, so there's technical guidance that's given during the manufacture for install, like upgoing maintenance that's associated with it. The common example that I would see is like when it comes to porous pavers, you have to get them usually swept clean with like a vacuum sweeper at least once a year, just to make sure that the gravel and the soil particulates don't block the grooves that allow
Right.
for water infiltration.
I'm just wondering about, in maintaining it, the property owner has to maintain it. How do you know whether the property owner is maintaining it and, is there teeth behind that
Yeah.
at all? Or?
So we are generally a complaint-driven community. We don't have the bandwidth to go out and make inspections all the time.
Right.
So when we start getting complaints that there's stormwater that's sheeting off onto other people's property, we would then go and look and investigate and say, you weren't following what you were supposed to, you need to fix this.
Okay.
So that's how we normally handle it.
Got a point on C as well. Took me a while as an engineer to wrap my head around differences between,
Make sure that you speak into the
I'm sorry.
microphone because we do have someone taking
Gotcha.
minutes.
took me a while to wrap my head around differences between pervious and impervious. I'm sorry, pervious and permeable. Okay? And I see in paragraph C as well, that you talk about permeability, then you talk about pervious up top and permeability at the bottom. I recommend using one term, not the other, because they are technically different. Took me a while to learn that, but it's true.
Yeah, I'm not
Defining-
sure if that word choice is too much of a split for professionals to understand. I can certainly talk to Acorn. They, again, reviewed this document, so I was sure that they would understand from a engineering perspective.
They would, and they are different from an engineering perspective. The trouble is, you use them both to mean the same thing, but different words. Let me try to explain that. You talk about, oh, geez, lost my paragraph there. Okay, you talk about, over here, the pavers, pavement, or other pervious surfaces, etc. Then you talk about to ensure perpetual permeability. So you ought to use the same term for both the first part of the sentence and the last part. In other words, use perviousness as opposed to permeability.
That's a word?
I believe it is.
Permeability is a word.
Perviousness.
But
You're
there's a
saying
technical.
it should be perpetual, what, like,
Well, there's a
that's, I don't know if there's a word for perviousness.
But there is a difference between pervious and permeable. And to use permeability and the other adjectives above there, and then jump down to, use pervious, the other adjectives above there, jump down to permeability, you might confuse somebody. Because they might think they're the same term and they're not. Am I explaining it well enough?
I think you just have to go back to Acorn and,
Yeah,
Yes, I would ask them for that.
yeah.
yeah. I think we're all talking the same thing, but
Yeah.
yes, I want to make
You're
sure.
talking the same thing, but technically they are different. And to use different words implies the intent is different in the first half of the sentence rather than in the second half of the sentence. But the intent should be the same, therefore the word should be the same. It's a nit to pick, but I think it's legitimate. I would get their advice on that.
Excuse me. Is there a definition section?
Yes, we have definitions in our land use.
So I'm just looking up permeability and pervious, just to,
Same here.
me too. So they're very close, aren't they?
Very close.
Yeah. So I guess the language in the document, in the definition section would be important, but, let's see.
I think Acorn would be able to help us there.
Yeah.
Huh. How true this is, because it's an AI assessment. But at the end, it does say, which I would have a little misgivings on, key differences to remember: pervious water passes through the material, permeable water passes around the materials.
Ah,
That's the
I'm
difference.
not sure that, I mean, I'd have to dig deeper to know if AI is correct there.
Hmm.
But that, we certainly wouldn't want, oh, no, it's
No.
passing around my bricks. You
That's
know?
Yeah.
interesting, because
Yeah.
my AI,
I'm not liking you all using AI.
pervious and permeable essentially mean the same thing in construction and environmental contexts, i.e. allowing water or fluids to pass through.
Depends on the AI. I looked at it earlier tonight,
Yeah,
and it did say, as you just said,
yeah.
one means passing through, one means passing around.
yeah.
But I always thought of permeability as passing through, to be honest.
But if we,
Like a
if we,
measurement.
actually in the document, if we actually stated what the meaning were, is, now I'm concerned about my words.
Yeah,
So we could change the end to say, to ensure rainwater passes through the pavers as designed, or something like that, right?
yeah.
Right,
It goes on to say pervious is used more for porous material versus permeable is with openings,
Yeah.
with something that liquid can pass through.
I think we just need to have our document
Yeah.
define it, and I guess Acorn would be a good start on that.
Or to ensure perpetual management of stormwater as designed.
It took longer, I thought.
Okay.
But AI is certainly wrong at times, so.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
it's not as
They
smart
both
as
could be
it is.
wrong.
Okay, any other on first page?
No. Well, I'll just say I'm still not happy with E, but it's closer. I'm not gonna let that hold anything up.
Liz, you put a comment about being consistent with the use of the 24-hour rain event, also used for 24-hour storm duration.
Yeah, I just saw those word usages later in the document.
I guess we ought to use whatever they have in the standard that we're referencing.
The second page here is, again, he again revised a lot of it to make it more uniform. There is the 10,000 square foot requirement that requires stormwater revaluation of 100-year, 24-hour, that's where it said the rainfall event. So I think he did change that from storm to rainfall. I think that's what it was up top too, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
Hey, Galen.
rainfall events. He makes
Okay,
it,
So you made it consistent?
yes, he made that consistent. Let me look here. And again, we're referencing and you're saying the shall.
Yeah.
Except. The channelized stormwater, regarding easements on property, Dan, I saw that you had a question about that.
Yeah.
So what this section is referring to is basically,
What section? Sorry.
this is subsection D under 10.7C. I think it's page 2.
Yep.
For some reason, it's labeled E, but that's not right. So what this section is referring to is if it's a new channelization that's going onto another person's property, that's when you would need a drainage easement to take effect. Existing channels that are going to go off the premise, because in theory, you're meeting the pre versus post development, so that should be the same as what it was before the development. So you don't need another easement if there's an existing channel on the premise. Does that make sense? It's only for new ones.
Okay. So,
And that's.
Hey,
to
Galen?
agree.
do you
Yep,
have existing in there?
it does, down at the very end of that paragraph on
Aye.
existing channel.
Yep, okay.
Yep.
Paul, I'm trying to get a hold of
Yes, Paul?
Yeah, just a quick question. Back to G up above before 10.7C. Is there a reason we limit it to topsoil fill as opposed to any other kind of fill?
Where are we at?
Good
G.
point.
Just,
G,
Okay,
okay,
use
G.
topsoil, it's all
G.
concrete.
Yep,
So the
Concrete
purpose,
chips
so
and rock.
so the purpose of G is so that the structures raise up, so you have something where water will pass through. And so so this is in an attempt, so I'm just testing for understanding. This is this is to answer the problem about people filling their property to raise them up, and then that creates the runoff down to the neighbors. So this is, they raise the house to allow the flow through.
yep.
Okay, so
Yep.
then to Paul's point, it should be any fill.
Any fill,
There should be any fill, correct.
remove the word topsoil.
Yeah. That's all. Just-
Well, it's saying it's prohibited, so it's the use of topsoil fill.
Yeah, but someone could say, okay, I'll fill with gravel and chunks of cement, and then put my house on it.
we've all seen that happen.
Or just soil. Not top.
Whoops. What happened?
You just,
I had to accept the change.
That's good.
Thanks.
Yep.
Okay, well,
Perfect.
yeah.
I did have one on the channel. Should we have them make an evaluation of whether it can handle the additional water flow?
Yeah,
Right, the channel might be there, but maybe it's a small channel. It was designed for one home, and now we got a second home on there using the same channel. Do we want them to do any evaluation to make sure the existing channel is suitable to handle the additional flow?
So in theory,
Yeah,
if you have a new development that's taking place on an existing channel, they should be capturing that stormwater to release it at the same rate as what was there before. So they're already giving you the calculations necessary to say the channel is going to be the same runoff-wise as it was before the development. That's what they're proving to us as the town if we adopt these standards.
So the impact is nil,
Correct.
as long as.
and where do I read that, Galen?
That subsection E that we're at right now. I know Acorn
Yeah, I
and I
guess-
had this conversation, because we did discuss this section, how it would work. And basically, existing channels, you wouldn't need a new easement because it's already an existing channel. And you're treating the stormwater already before it leaves the site, so it shouldn't be creating more of an adverse impact. Versus a new channel that's gonna go into another person's property, they need to consent to that stormwater being drained off-site. And they know that the risk involved in having that.
Yeah, I guess, what I was thinking was if I've, you know, there's a channel that's running between me and my neighbor, right? And I've got a lot, he's got a home, and I'm gonna build. It handled the existing water as it was designed. I mean, as it laid, I mean, it might have been just a natural channel, right? But now I change my lot such that I'm putting more water into that channel.
But then we wouldn't approve that.
We wouldn't approve that. So we gotta, still have to,
Because right now, they would have like some sort of retention system in place, either a retention pond or, you know, rain garden or whatever it is, and it would slowly release the water back off the site. It's gonna channel, it's gonna go in the channel, but it's keeping it back
Flow, keep the
for
flow
a
rate.
certain
So-
period of time.
The flow rate.
so do you feel there's sufficient language in here for you to be able to make that statement and push back if they say, yeah, I'm gonna funnel it all through that channel, it's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it.
Well, again, because they're gonna have a stormwater management plan, if they are required to have a stormwater management plan, we have
Yeah, right, right,
exceptions.
right. Cause
So-
maybe it's coming to you, right? Without-
Right,
Yeah.
right. Unless it requires planning board approval.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, as long as you feel it's sufficient for you to be able
Right.
to push back on someone doing something like that.
again, we always put the caveat that, you know, there's gonna be years down, decades maybe, after a development, and rain events do change, and so there might be,
Yeah.
you know, other storm events that would cause greater impact, but we can only do with what we can right now.
Good.
Page 3, were there any questions on that
This was-
page? This is another one of the shall.
Yeah. It does have 24-hour duration storm instead of rainfall event, I just noticed that. And above as well.
Yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah, so you may wanna, it's a good pickup.
I think where he had put it originally, he didn't have the word duration, but just decide how you want it and then make them all the same.
And why did B go away?
Because it went up here,
Okay,
yeah.
Then this next piece gets into the subdivision,
Yep.
right? So,
So this is kind of out of our wheelhouse.
I was gonna say, we've never treaded into the subdivision, that was
Yep.
kinda off limits.
So the planning board's gonna deal with this tomorrow night.
Okay.
With their section, but, you know, I wanted to go over, like, he is
Yeah.
again providing the same language, we're trying to be consistent here. The issue we had in the subdivision regulations is you'll notice that it says total suspended solids right there.
Yeah,
That is an outdated term, that is no longer used in the industry. So when we've had developments try to go in front of the planning board, the engineers are trying to figure out, okay, what are we trying to address here? And is it chapter 500, is it something else? And so Acorn is helping to give guidance that said this is what we should be doing as best management practices to address erosion onto adjacent properties and to treat using best management practices from the same manual.
okay. Yeah, and just,
Again, they're mostly technical changes.
yeah, stormwater law, I didn't know
Yep.
what that was. It's just whatever
Yeah, it's chapter 500 for Maine DEP.
okay. Should that be capitalized? I mean, is that what it's called?
The stormwater law?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not stormwater management law or something like
I believe that's the right.
that? Or is that, you know, is that just short for?
I'll double check with Acorn, but they're the ones that made the red mark, so. And there's the channelization again. That language is right here. And again, this is what Acorn Engineering has been noticing in just their constant review of subdivision plans of where our ordinance doesn't have the teeth necessary to give guidance to new housing developments that are coming to town. So that was that section. So outside of, I need to find anything else that's dealing with the rain events and the shalls, and then the permeability aspect of it. / pervious. Is there anything else I'm missing?
Nope, I mean, it's capturing all new construction, basically. Greater than 800 feet or less than 800 feet, you're still doing something to maintain the water on your property. Right? For a certain type storm, I mean, obviously.
How are we all feeling about that?
Yeah. The interesting thing would be, if I'm a homeowner, and I go ahead and I do this, and the 24-hour rain event is 2.7 inches, whatever it is, right? And 10 years from now, it's 3.8, and I have a problem. What do you go, hey, I designed it to handle 2.7.
Yep, back then.
Don't come talking to me about this. I got an engineer, I mean, because it's gonna cost people money to come up with, or if they do it on their own, still. At some point, we said, yeah, we accepted it for that year. So
I
somehow
think-
we have to capture that so that we know that that was done, you know, in 2026. And here we are in 2040, we can't really force you to do something different.
Well, I think that's, you know, so we actually have that in town right now, all right? We have houses raised up to the point that Paul raised before. We have houses raised up that have topsoil backed up and
Yeah.
draining. We're not gonna say to them, okay, no, fix it, right? So there's gonna be some as is that will remain
Yeah,
in situ, but then at some point, if they go to redo something to this point, then you're, just like any code, right? You have to go back, electrical codes,
Oh, yeah,
anything,
yeah.
right? You get up to a certain level and you've gotta now play with the current
New rules.
ordinances.
Yeah. But from a tracking system, is there a way for us to track that? The town can track that home, that was approved in 2026 and?
Yeah, it'll be in their property file. So that stormwater management plan, everything we keep, all documents, they stay in the property file. And certainly, you know, I think in the future, we're gonna also be mapping out our MS4 infrastructure because that is one of the requirements that we will start seeing later down the road is they want to see where all your infrastructure is currently, where do projects tie in. Just so when you do have issues in the future that you know where to track it of where you may have had a problem in the past. But it happens, you know, there's developments that go in and then, you know, the decades go by and now they need larger culverts because
Right.
Yeah.
it just wasn't made up to code for what it needed to deal with the storm events of today. So that stuff does happen.
Do you guys wanna hear some of my thoughts when you guys bring this in front of the board, or do you wanna wait till when it comes in front of the board? Do you want to hear some of my questions or just thoughts now, or do you want to wait until you come in front of the whole select board and hear it all together?
No, you can do it.
Okay. So just reading through it, some of the things rattling around in my head is, so, you know, I like the idea of the stormwater, you know, and how it's being handled. I think to Galen's point and to this group, this is something that you guys wanted to tackle, and I think it's good. But what I don't understand is, and I'm trying to get my head wrapped around it, is what's the impact to the average homeowner? Like, what does this process look like? You know, like, what is the barrier now and the cost? And, you know, how much level do they have to hire somebody now, you know, in addition? So does it take our cost price to build a house and jack it up once again? So I think that's something that, you know, with some of these types of regulations, even though they're really good and beneficial, I think we have to sort of think through, at least from a board level, you know, what the impact is. So that's one of them. The second one is, what's in my mind is 1829, LD 1829, and then does 1829 basically say this is irrelevant for the growth area. So then if that's true, then did we create a disparity between, if that's true, indeed true, then did we create a disparity between people developing in the growth area versus people not developing in the growth area? So now if I'm developing in the rural area and I want to do a 800 square foot ADU, am I having more onus and cost put on me versus if I was in the growth area of town because of 1829? Those are things I don't have clarity to at this point that I would ask when it comes in front of the board.
Mary Beth?
Yep.
I guess one response to your first question is, what's the cost to the community and to the neighbors of not doing this? We've seen impacts, and the impacts are going to just get worse. And is it fair to existing property owners to have their conditions deteriorated because of the next door neighbor raising the lot and dumping the water, into the basements of existing homeowners?
Yeah, and I think, Paul, that's an excellent response, and that's something that I think I'd like to have that brought up at the select board, so the people that tune into the select board can get that understanding, especially when we have the public hearing part of the ordinances, so people get a clarity of why, to your point, why this is, why this additional, but it also would be helpful maybe to at least have the answer of what does this look like for, because I'm thinking in terms of the public hearing of the ordinance, what does this look like to the average homeowner? So does the average homeowner, because it's something that an average homeowner can read and come up with their own plan. Like I go to that list that we were presented, and I have a water garden now, or I did a ditch, and so I don't have to go and hire a storm runoff engineer, and I'm okay at a layperson's. Like if this is able to be accomplished at a layperson's level versus having to have a professional PE, somebody licensed in this area, I think that's good to also understand from the public standpoint at the hearing.
That's a good point, because can we bring that back up again for the, I guess there's two questions I would have, is one, when someone's doing something, it force them to go to the planning board versus code to get approval?
Yeah, so for planning board, it's generally, residential is exempt from going to planning board outside of multiplexes. So any single family normally goes through the code enforcement officer. Two family goes through the code enforcement officer. If it's in resource protection, I believe it does go to planning board because of the environmental sensitivity, but outside of that, single family homes normally go through.
Yeah, so single family and
Two family, yeah.
Go to code. So then, and what will we require in the code to sort of prove, I'm coming to you with my plan, this is what I'm gonna do, and these are the things, I looked up the handbook, I looked up it says it's gonna be 3 inches of rain in 24 hours. I researched the LID handbook, and it says these, to be honest with you, I haven't looked at it, so I don't know what it says specifically, but it's told me that, can it tell me that these are the two or three things you should do to handle that kind of flow?
Yeah, they have technical design standards there that are available for people if they so choose to look at them, and if they want to hire a contractor that's going to design that, they have specs there to help you.
But in your opinion, a layperson would, like if I asked that question at the select board, in your opinion, a layperson would be able to, there's enough there that a layperson would be able to say, okay, here's my design?
They could. It's going to be a lot of sweat equity and to learn that system, to comprehend it and design it correctly, right?
Okay.
If you have years of experience as a contractor of doing these on site, right, you can do a lot quicker. But if someone wants to take the time and read the manual and...
So said differently, people usually go, and if they're doing some housework, they usually go to a builder. So is this something that a builder would be able to, over time, do within their own learned expertise, or will that builder have to hire a consultant to do this for him.
Well,
or her.
some building teams, like, they have subcontractors for a lot of different things.
Okay,
You know,
so
so
it's-
there's that relationship in, like, our larger subdivisions, like, the developer
Right,
either has their
right,
own
right.
people on staff,
Right.
or they get subcontractors to put in.
Right. So what I'm hearing is it's pretty much, you're gonna probably have some level of need of an expert to come in, which is, if that's the answer, that's fine. I just want it to be, I just would like the public to understand what they're signing on to.
Yeah, but I guess I would ask, would we require like a certified document from a PE or somebody saying they reviewed the residential homes stormwater management plan and have accepted it? Or would we just accept, here's some drawings, could have been drawings I did with my plan to ensure that we're keeping the stormwater on site and it's based on these practices, and submit that myself? Would that be acceptable? Right, so I think that's where, I mean, once you start asking for the PE, the signature and all that stuff, you're adding money versus, I've done all the research myself and here's the information that supports it. You can challenge it and say, well, what about this, what about this? And it goes, I go back and do some more homework, but at the end of the day, it's still me as a homeowner, educated myself and can do this work. I think that'd be the kind of the goal for the single family, even multifamily
And
construction.
we specifically didn't require that signature, that
Yeah.
certification. It was made to be a,
Plan.
do-it-yourself plan or get somebody to help you. But we weren't requiring specifically a higher standard. We had that choice early on when we were talking about this, and we decided not to go that route.
And what about the second question? Just people's understanding, because I wasn't clear. My initial thought was that it would, regarding 1829. Does that wipe this out, or do I understand it wrong?
Good question.
Say it again.
So
Question.
when LD 1829, if we're saying for the growth area, I think that was part of the problem when we were looking through 1829, that it would circumvent or basically say that this is no longer relevant. We couldn't have them designed to our water runoff to this ordinance.
Where was that at? I don't remember seeing. reading
That
1829.
came up it came up in our general discussion, and that's why I'm still unclear about that. So if,
'Cause my understanding is, as long as we're treating everyone the same, all housing types are being treated the same, the performance standards apply.
okay. So said differently, and again, I'm just saying these are my questions.
Yeah.
That I'll be throwing out there, so I'm putting them out there now, so you guys can think about them, and, so then said differently, if I'm looking at a house if I'm looking at a lot in the growth area, and I'm able to go from one house to 4, but I don't have room for the water runoff storage.
You have to solve the problem.
You have to solve the problem. So so that is something that is a truth then, right? Is that LD 1829 doesn't circumvent that. It doesn't override that. Okay.
They have
And
to
the
figure out
fact
how to
that,
design it.
okay, so the fact that we're putting this ordinance in now,
Yeah.
okay,
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
is a good thing.
To answer your question, Dan, about the complexity of submitting plans, would we require a technical sheet? I think if they were creating a new drainage easement, I think we would want that to be engineered. That's my only advice that I would give if we decide to go that route. Because when you're creating a new channel, the neighboring property owner is probably going to be impacted. And there might be a discrepancy between the two, and there might need to be a professional appeal. So I would advise that we would, if they are doing a new channel, have to get that engineered to make sure that things are being designed as implemented, and to make sure it's not going to cause a negative impact to a neighbor.
Let me ask a question apropos to that point. I was thinking about this. Say you own a house on a slope, at the bottom of the hill. And the guy owns a lot uphill, does everything right. He builds his house according to all the codes and so forth and so on. But there's still further hill up beyond him. So his house is now, let's say, right up the hill from yours. All that rainwater that comes down behind his house goes around the house, okay? And comes down and goes down towards your house. Now you got, I'm just positing something here. Maybe you have twice the volume of water because it's pushed away, it doesn't join, maybe two swales, and it comes down, and your house now is getting a lot more water at one section than it did before, because the other house uphill was in the way, basically diverting the water around the house. Who's going to investigate that engineering-wise, make sure that that house uphill isn't going to cause, even though it's constructed according to code and everything else, isn't going to cause maybe an excess of water going one side of his house and the other side of his house directly at my house further downhill. I live at the top of the hill, it's not a problem for me. But speaking in general, you may have a homeowner down below who's now screwed because he's getting twice as much water or more than was designed because the house is placed right there to divert water around his house down to the victim's house at the bottom of the hill.
Right, and we
And
have
Tom?
that, we do have that in town, where, people do live on a hill, water goes downhill, like that happens. So you're asking in a hypothetical situation, and I'm assuming that this was a pre-existing house?
The house at the bottom of the hill was pre-existing.
Yep,
The new house is
so it's a new
uphill.
house on the hill. Yeah, so we would be investigating that to see if it was, if it was designed as planned. If we're running into issues of the improvements that were designed, and this is the risk that people take in not getting it engineered, if we notice that we're having issues, we can look up those calculations and say, it's not working as planned, you need to go back to the drawing board. And at that point, I think you would hire a professional instead of wasting your time to make sure that this is designed and constructed correctly at that point.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I could see the situation where, you have the homeowner at the bottom of the hill, right? They're getting a certain amount of water today,
Already, yes.
right? And that's an empty lot. But then above that, there's another home, right? They may never have done anything to manage their water, because this is all beforehand, right? So you're in between. You may have to pay to take care of your neighbor's property that's uphill of you, pay for his water, right? Because you can't change what's happening down here,
Down below, yeah.
right? Based on your,
But until this ordinance goes in, this has happened in our neighborhood a couple of times. Your only recourse has been, there's been no standards, so they can do whatever the heck they want, and your only recourse would be to, bring a nuisance suit yourself against them and say, you've invaded my property,
right,
Right,
and fight it out in court.
right,
that's right.
okay.
And I think because we have so much ledge around here, it exasperates the problem for runoff, right? So as soon as you start disturbing that uphill land, and to Paul's point, that's what happened in our neighborhood. They disturbed the uphill land, and then literally the floodgates opened. So.
So let me just throw one more thing out there.
Yep.
My 50-foot buffer.
Yep.
What if it doesn't work?
What if the 50
What if,
foot?
what if you, okay, I did my 50-foot buffer. Now I do whatever I want inside my property, and water flows out of my property to the neighbors. But the code doesn't say anything to do anything more than have the 50-foot buffer.
Yeah, but if you're not
Are there-
meeting the pre and post development, then you're gonna have to
Does that still
redesign your system at that point.
So that still applies?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not bringing it up yet because I've got to sleep on it a number of nights, and this is going to be a while before it gets to the select board. But the 50-foot buffer is also, it's not a clarity done deal for me, and I'll tell you why. Because as I sit here today, it's almost like one of the solutions. And so I'm trying to figure out, why are we being why are we being so descriptive? in this one area, when it's and I know I actually can maybe even say the counter argument now, but I haven't thought through it. And so that's where I'm still struggling with that part of it. Because I think you should be able to show up with anything. And I feel like we've taken this water water runoff, and we've implemented another thing that we also are concerned about, and we dumped it into here. And I don't necessarily like those cross-pollinations. I like things to be a little cleaner. But I'm just letting you know where my
Well,
thoughts are before
yeah.
you get to the board.
Question, does that 50-foot buffer count as part of your best management practice, your low impact development, Galen?
Yes. Yep.
So you'd be required to have it because of one part of the ordinance, but it would count as part of your contribution to make sure the water stays where it's supposed to stay.
But
Yeah.
right now, it's only in there for developments, not for individual homeowners, right? I think
Right,
that was my
this
understanding.
makes it consistent with subdivisions, what we've always had for subdivisions.
Right,
Yeah, it's,
yeah, so I think
I
I'm
mean,
I'm still stuck. I'm just letting you guys know, this is like when you come from the board, I'm still stuck here. So I understand, I've been through the discussion with you guys, so I understand where you're coming from, but I'm still stuck on this one.
well, to be clear, I mean, it's not my 50-foot buffer. I agree, I don't want the 50-foot buffer. I believe that we just need to make sure that the stormwater stays on property.
Yeah,
But I'm one member of the team, and the
Right.
rest of the team wants the other way. So
Yep.
that's fine. It's just, I want to make sure that we don't want someone to say, well, I did my 50-foot buffer, I don't have to do anything else. And so I've built this palace, and all the water's coming down the chute and flying over to my neighbors, who I don't like. Right. Yeah. Any other discussion on the stormwater management?
So we do have to send these to the select board.
Right.
It's on their agenda technically on Thursday because there's certain deadlines the clerk
Yep.
requires us to meet. So outside of the shall being changed, the permeability impervious, to discuss that about the definition with the consultant. Was there anything else that I needed to?
No, other than, I mean, from just the subdivision regs, we've never sort of like voted on those changes.
Yeah, the planning board
So
will.
I think we would leave that off anything that we say.
Yeah.
Do you need something from us to talk about its consistency tonight, or can we do that at a later point, once everything's been sort of finalized?
I think so, but I can double check. I don't know when I want to make sure you're comfortable with us
Yeah,
putting this, keeping it through the process.
Well, when's the board have to make, the board of selectmen have to make their decision on whether this goes to the warrant? Is that Thursday?
This is the first time they're looking at it, and then they have all these public hearings
Okay.
that they have to do. Let me pull up that document to get the actual date, because we have to send it to the attorney as well.
Okay.
is it March?
I think that we could do it
Yeah.
later.
I think it's like March.
I think it's mid-March.
Yeah, we could do it probably on a February meeting once, I just assume see a final copy before we. give that
Agree.
opinion. Right, yeah.
Yeah, the critical dates here are, let's see. January 22nd, the presentation to the Board of Selectmen, committee department heads for any proposed ordinance changes. Afterwards, proposals sent to the appropriate boards, committees and legal for review. So that's on the 22nd. And then there's a public discussion and input from the select board at their February 12th meeting. And then we get the suggested changes by the town attorney as presented on February 26th.
Okay. So if we get an opportunity to see those changes prior.
Yeah. So you want to do it for your February?
We'll do our second meeting if we can. If there's still changes being done, then we wait until March, because it'd be good to do it on the final version,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, because the final draft ordinance presentation to the select board with any last minute changes is March 12th.
Okay, so we could do our first March one then.
Yeah.
First or second. Perfect.
Okay, and you want to discuss the road standards?
Parking?
Oh, sorry, parking standards? I had a lot of roads on my mind.
Yeah, I mean, that was
Ugh.
pretty minor changes there. That's the requirement, then that's the requirement.
Let me pull this up, and I need to go get my plug. So right here's the first section is dealing with the LD 427. This is your residential parking standards. And so what this is saying is basically in the growth area, we will only require one parking space per dwelling. It doesn't matter if it's single family, multiplex. The law states that we have to keep it that way. We can't treat it any differently. You'll remember that back in November, we did change our parking standards to what's in front of you. Of a studio to two-family only requires one space. So we just added this one sentence that basically says if you're in the growth area of the town's comprehensive plan, only one space will be required for this dwelling unit. That's for us to comply with the law.
I just wonder what the idea is, like if somebody is having a gathering of people at their home, there's no place for people to park? If you only have one parking place? So,
It's off-street
I
parking.
guess there's, what?
It would be off-street parking.
Yeah.
One off-street,
Yeah, it's only one off-street parking.
But-
All the rest could be on street, if allowed.
if allowed. So it doesn't matter whether there is allowed on-street parking near the residence that is only allowed one parking spot.
We can only require one. If they want to put more in, they can certainly put more in if they so choose. The state's just saying you can't require that they put two in or more. We can only require one space. But people, they can put more spaces in if they have more cars. That's perfectly acceptable.
You would think a developer in this town, knowing that we don't have the on-street parking, would put in enough parking spaces, at least for the dwelling units, so they each would have two or something like that, right? Because he's gonna have to sell it.
Okay.
And people are gonna go, well, I got two cars. Well, we have to go park in Arundel or something. That's not gonna work, right? So,
So we don't expect that it's going to work out that way, but we have to
They don't,
put
but
that in.
it's a state law. It's a one-size-fits-all for the state of Maine.
So do you want to hear my comments I might bring up at the board meeting? Or do you want me to wait? I'm giving you the choices.
Well, it's a state law. I mean, it's.
Well, so here's my point, and this is the point I'll bring up with the other board members, is yes, I understand it's a state law, but so I'm thinking about this, and I want to hear from the other board members. It's a state law, yes, but it's a state law done with blinders on. And parking, especially in our growth area, is one of our critical issues. It is a high critical issue, one of the highest that we have in our growth area. So I would find it almost strange that we would go and do anything that would exacerbate that issue without trying to figure out what's the impact and what would be a way to alleviate it, if that's truly what we have to do. And so I hear from some constituents of our residents that say some of these things we should slow walk because we need to understand the repercussions from it, and then can we make things life better? And I think for me, listening to some of those residents, I would feel that this might fall into that bucket. So that will be some of the comments I make to the other board members, knowing that it is something the state needs us to do or requires us to do. But then at the same time, I feel like I've done half our job because we haven't figured out how to, because we do think that there will be a very negative side effect to a negative problem that we have already. and we just made it worse.
Yeah.
So, it's like we did half our job.
I think that's fine, and, I would encourage the board to be aggressive against some of the stuff, but at the same time, if that's what the law says, then
Mhm.
it's gotta at least come to your table and say, these are the changes we need to make to comply, and then you guys can decide, yeah, we're gonna fight this, and, we don't wanna have this go to warrant. I think that-
And that's what
I'm
I.
not sure that comes
Yeah,
back to this
so-
committee, or
Well, that's what I don't know.
certainly can't
I
go
think
to the,
that's something I'd like to talk with the board about
Yeah.
and get some advice from Galen and Lori is, if the board does want to try to solve any impacts, where would that go? What would that look like? Does it come back to the growth committee board? Does it go to some other committee? Do we look at some, because there are, I think when we've talked to different reps in the state and stuff, this is an issue that we have. And when we get these impacts, especially tourist town in the summer, in the winter, they probably would have no trouble parking unless there's a snowstorm. Then they'd have to go someplace off, away from the snowplows. But in the summertime, I have no comprehension on how this would actually work. And again, I understand it's state law, but at the same time,
Mhm.
I feel an onus that we have to at least try to think through how to fix part of this or alleviate part of the pressure that would come. And maybe we delay it and we think through it a little bit more, and we ask for more, I don't know, and that's what I want to bring up and hear from the other board members.
So this law was approved in June of 2025. Is it,
It went into effect as of November of 2025.
and the reason, I guess, I'm just looking at the LD
Yeah.
here, is there a reason, the reasoning is because we need more homes and they don't need to have cars? We need more homes for people who don't
well,
need
Yeah,
cars?
I think the argument is having arbitrary parking standards, especially more urban areas. I don't think it's an issue in rural areas, but in urban areas where you have really small lots that are already pretty much developed as they are, to get those additional parking spaces requires sometimes parking garages, which are a lot more costly to a housing project than just putting in, gravel or something in more of a rural area. So I don't see this necessarily being an issue in Kennebunkport. I think most people are going to put in however many parking spaces they want. But in more urban areas, with a stronger downtown feel, I could see that being problematic.
But they make the
Housing.
rule for
Yes.
everybody,
Right.
not just those urban areas where it
Yep.
makes sense.
Yeah, so part of my discussion with the select board will be, on the flip side of it is, yes, it's a state law, and we could get, everyone tells me that we could get sued if we're not in compliance with the state law. But if we play out the discussion we just had, when Jane asked the question and people said, well, developers really will put in the parking spots that are needed for our town, then we really shouldn't be looking at a lawsuit from the developer, if that's the truth. If the flip side of it is true and we will get lawsuits, then we are exasperating an already critical problem with not having enough parking spots. So in that case, if that's the truth, then I would like to at least think through, what would we do? So I'm just like, this isn't a real thing at all. But, do you have residential parking on some of our public streets? Like, I'm just saying, is that something we would have to do if we had something like this? How do you ensure during the height of the season that residents would actually have a parking spot? If a builder did do this, if a homeowner did do this on their property.
So then, in that case, if we were to require on-street parking, we probably would have to widen some of our streets. I mean.
No, so these are off-street
Off-streets.
parking standards for residential uses.
Yeah,
So they're supposed to provide this minimum number of residential parking spaces. They can exceed it if they so choose. But if they decide, hey, I want to have 3 cars, and they decide to park on the street, that's where we do have jurisdiction as the town, because that is the town's street. We would certainly have to go through the enforcement mechanism at that point. Or if there's prohibited parking, there's some streets that we have that you aren't allowed to park on the street just because of how narrow those streets are. And if people are parking there, there would be enforcement from the town police. So I think there is enforcement mechanisms in place for the town, but that's a conversation for the select board to determine if there's other alternative paths to move forward.
So if you're the homeowner and you're building a house, you can determine how many spaces you want, 2,
Yeah.
3, 4, whatever it is.
Yep.
Okay, or if you buy a house with one, you can tear down the house and put as many parking spaces as you want. So the homeowner has options, it sounds like.
Yeah, the homeowner has options. I mean, my family, we had 2 spaces, but there was 4 of us that had cars, and so we park on the lawn like that. Families do that to get by. You don't need to have all those extra parking spaces, but some people like that extra space for guests and visitors. Just says we can only require 1, that's it. The next section, if there's no other questions, is our performance standards. Where are we at here? So we're going this is under the Article 10. This is your site plan review process with the planning board. And so I will be sharing this with the planning board tomorrow. But it's under the land use section. And so in our parking standards throughout town, we do not have any standard that says that you can't do alternative parking arrangements on your site, except in this section. We do specify in this subsection B that you have to design a parking layout that every vehicle can be moved independently without moving another vehicle. And so when it comes to site plan review process, this is a weird performance standard to have because it doesn't apply to the rest of the town. It only applies during site plan review process. And so, staff looked at this and said, okay, I think we understand what the intent is here, is if you want to allow people to park independently, but if you want to control parking on your site, you should have the option to offer an alternative parking plan. And that's what this section would allow, this amendment. It would allow for approval through the emergency services team to make sure that any alternative parking arrangement, like if they want to do valet parking, stacked parking situations on their lot, they can do so as long as they show that emergency services can still access that lot in event of a fire or emergency medical event that takes place on the site. So that's the intent behind this amendment that's in front of you tonight. Are there any questions?
Seems fair.
Okay. So that's your parking standards.
Okay. Any questions? Nope. Perfect. So I think next on our agenda is other topics. Anyone have any other topics to discuss?
Paul has-
I have one.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering whether anyone knows of any update to possible revisions to 1829 or any progress on,
21.
I forget the number of gears, more recent one,
1921?
1926,
1921.
1926?
21, 26, and I forget the other one.
Yeah, there's another one too.
I know 1926 and 1921 were at the committee. They had a workshop today, actually. I was not able to log on to check how that went, but I know they're having discussions about those 2 pieces of legislations, and I saw that it was tabled. So I think they're still trying to workshop those 2 bills that I'm familiar with. I still haven't heard any more about 1829 Fix-It bill. I think that's still in the drafting phase.
We didn't really get any, Southern Maine Planning and Development or anyone know, like, what the directions were given for the fix-it bill, like categories? Because we haven't heard, like, we don't even know what they're attempting to fix. Is there anything out in the?
I know, so I've had a conversation with Representative Gear about our concerns over the floodplain. And that is something that I think that they are considering. I had talked to Maine Office of Community Affairs as well. It's called MOCA. They're the department that handles all this implementation and rulemaking, and they understand our position as a coastal community. It sounds like there's a difference in visioning between coastal communities and riverine communities, where they might have old mill towns, where they want to make affordable housing out of these mills that are right on the river.
Saco.
So there's a little bit of a, I think, difference in thought process, but they understand where Kennebunkport, where our position is and our concerns with the current legislation as it stands.
And other towns similar to us. So
Yes.
that's where they're
Yeah.
seeing the coastal versus the
Yeah.
river. Good.
So is there a time limit that they're aware of that we're having to deal with at the towns? And would we like to see this in a timely manner so that we can make our decisions? Is the state aware of what we are up against in terms of our
Oh,
time
yeah,
limits?
they know our timeframe. And there are already communities that are already starting to have those conversations. The grant portal opened for communities to ask for grants from the state to start with implementation. Most of the town council form of governments, they're already in the process of trying to implement the changes because they have a shorter deadline. I believe it's this
Yeah, it's this year,
June or November, I forget which one it is,
June.
that they have to comply. Because they don't have to go through the public meetings and the hearings and the votes with the residents. So there's already towns already applying and starting to implement changes.
So they're anticipating no changes being made by the fix-it bill?
But they don't have a choice, they have
They
to
don't have a
get,
choice. Yeah,
they
they'll
have to get
do
moving.
amendments.
Right.
yeah.
So they're accepting as it stands is what I'm
Or
trying to
not.
get to. Well, they're accepting it
Well-
if they're proceeding, and maybe or maybe not, they'll
Right.
try to fight a battle, but that's an expensive and time-consuming action.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. I think too, because they have there's not a large process for them that they have to follow. They also probably get closer to that June deadline they have to find that fix-it bill to make any tweaks and changes before they finally adopt. So I think you'll see a rush at the end,
Okay.
yeah. But they're already having conversations with their
So
planning
town
boards.
councils don't go to public vote? Is that,
They still have to publicly
still, okay.
advertise, but it's not a long,
it's not like
Yeah.
our length that we
Yeah.
have? Okay, so their turnover, their reaction time
Yeah.
is much different than ours type of
Yeah.
government.
Yeah.
so we'll keep you abreast as we hear more.
Okay, yeah, looking forward to hearing about that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other? Paul, anything else?
I'm good.
Any other?
Nope.
I was just gonna ask about minutes, but you mentioned talking to Mike, please, because there's someone taking minutes. So
Yep.
That's, okay, cool. Then I have no other.
You haven't
business.
received any yet, have you?
Yeah, I
Okay.
haven't seen any in a bit. All right. Hearing no other discussion, I will take a motion.
I move to finish.
To adjourn? All right.
Adjourn.
Second.
Second.
10
Any discussion on adjourning? Hearing none, all in favor?
Hi.
Thank you much.
Thank you.
Have a good night, all.
You too.
Thank you.
You too.